Morning, everybody. Welcome to a fresh Monday's edition of Bread for Soul Convos with myself, Sir LSG. And firstly, thank you so much for joining me this morning, joining us, I should rather say. And if it's your first time watching the show, welcome. If you're a regular viewer, thank you so much for doing this. And basically, the show is really about sharing knowledge and experiences with everyone, so that we can teach and learn from one another. I think that's the best way actually to be learning by just seeing other people's experiences, and sometimes you kind of link that to our own experiences, and that's how we learn, that's how we teach one another. And on this show this morning, I have a guest who's not a stranger if you've been watching the show religiously, Dr. Tonyane. She's a specialist psychiatrist, and her practice is based in Midrand at the Live Kastenhof Hospital. And if I could just show people the picture here. This is in Midrand, 21 Dane Road, Glen Austin. And her email is there, info@eropsych.co.za. The number is also there, 011-655-5641. That is Dr. Gwen Tonyane. Welcome to the show, Doctor. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And how's everybody?
We are good. The other guy on the other side, my friend and DJ colleague, DJ KABILA. How are you, brother?
I'm good and you, my brother.
I'm great. Thank you so much for doing this, both of you, because I know time is very important in our lives, but to share your time and to share your knowledge and experiences is really humbling. So thank you so much. Doctor, let me actually kisimule ka wena, firstly, if you could, because other people, I mean, will explain again as during the course of the show, but if you could explain to people what else, or like what exactly does your practice do?
Okay. Yeah, no, thanks for that question. I think, yeah, there's always this confusion between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. So let me start with myself. A psychiatrist. So a psychiatrist is a medical doctor, right? Then after we became independent practitioners, instead of opening like a surgery, then we decided to go to school for another 4 to 5 years and specialize in mental health. Other doctors specialized, for instance, they wanted to be surgeons or gynecologist or cardiologists. We specialize primarily in mental health illnesses. So then that's what we do. So because we're medical doctors, we can prescribe medication, we can do procedures such as electroconvulsive therapy, right, where we take you to theater, put you under general anesthesia to sort of help almost like jumpstart your neurons, the chemicals in the brain, if medication is taking too long to work. And then we also do therapy. What the psychologists do, we also do therapy, but maybe not at a greater extent as the psychologists. So the psychologists then, because they're not medically trained, or the clinical psychologists, perhaps they have some training in therapy in clinical conditions. So they will also do therapy, and they can do psychometric testing. So testing like personality, and a few other tests. So they can do that. So I think that is the biggest difference. And because we're medical doctors, should you collapse, we can still save your life. Okay, we can, if we need to, we can still take you to theater. So I always joke that with my patients that I'm still a medical doctor. I still know how a spleen and an abdomen and your appendix looks like, and I can still take it out if I need to.
It sounds very dangerous. But what I wanted to talk about today specifically, bringing DJ KABILA on board. I mean, KABILA is a DJ, he's a producer, he's an events promoter, and he owns a B&B in Durban, like Iba. So guys, if you're in Durban, you want a place to crash, like Iba is your place, and they're all run and owned by DJ KABILA. And specifically on this show, I wanted to talk about trauma, but more about mental strength, like the mental strength side of trauma, because certain things do happen to us. And like I like to share my own experiences with regards to being in a car accident. I've been in about 3 car accidents now, but the last one that happened, really got to me because it hurt my back. It took some time for me to get back physically, but mentally too. It really did affect me, because now I'm thinking, I used to go to the gym, now I can't go to the gym. I used to be so active in certain things, now I need to be cautious, I can't work, and so forth, and the different things that come with physically being injured. But you, DJ Kabila Mfetu, like you also were in an accident that caused you to be wheelchair bound. And your story is not so well documented, even though you are doing so many things. I guess other people, when they see you, he's doing events, he's doing this, but they don't actually know the story. Like, if you could share with us the story of how you became wheelchair bound.
Okay, my man. I was still staying in PE. I think it was around September. We're just going to a vibe, with my friends. We were not a dear friend of mine. So
If you don't mind, Kabila, I think because the computer might be a bit far away from you. I don't know if you can ask Umpira to bring it closer to you.
Okay, cool. How is it now?
If you can speak a bit louder.
Okay, yeah, I mean, like I'm saying, like I was still staying in PE. I think 99. We're just going around with my friends. Like I think we're attending a party in PE Tech. Had a car accident. Which paralyzed me. Which is like T4. It's somewhere in your chest. Down. So when that accident really happened, it's so amazing, man. How like God works, like because my mother was like a single parent. He's a police. At that time, even the medical aids, were not given to like the single parents at that time when I got an accident. But he had already applied, and by the grace of God, like when I got that accident, my medical aid was uplifted, but I stayed in a hospital called I just forgot the name of the hospital, but it's when you don't have like things like medical aid, like it's within a week I had already like developed bed sores, in that hospital. So it was a government hospital. But fortunately, because like my medical aid was uplifted, I was transferred to like a rehabilitation center, which had good facilities, so I stayed there maybe for about 3 months, so I learned, to be self-sufficient, in terms of like how to control, my bowel, how to control, there's a lot of things which happens when you don't function the same as, how run around and do all these things, So I learned like the new body of me, like in terms of like how we had to now like calculate, like what are you going to do, like like the whole system of just like running your body in terms of your health. You need to be cautious that you need to like sleep a certain way, so that you don't develop bed sores, because once you develop those things, you can end up like maybe in a hospital for a year, like for example, like I think like in 2015, um, I just released my album, Music Will Save the Day. You know, I was busy like promoting that, you know. And and I had a lot of stress, you know, I was sleeping a lot, you know. And then I started developing bed sores, which is, it took me like a whole year in hospital to fix those things, you know. So it's not that easy, you know, like managing your body, you know, once you become like disabled.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. And I think, Mfetu, like it's such a powerful story, like your story, because we've went on, you know, from your accident to see you doing events, you know, seeing you still pushing your DJing career, releasing albums, like you said, you know, and touring and doing so many things. But if I wanna get you in here, Doctor, with regards to the mental effects of such traumatic events, you know, like from a like neurological standpoint, like what actually happens in our brains when we experience such events.
All right. So maybe not to get maybe too technical. So, like I think before we've discussed that the brain is divided in four main parts, you know, what we call the four lobes. But there's certain smaller structures that are deep and seated in the brain that sort of control what we call our limbic system, that sort of control our fear and our emotions, right? So, so if you had to do like a functional MRI, and if you're anxious or you fear something, these are the parts of the brain that sort of light up to show sort of anxiety and fear. So what happens is that sometimes with trauma, especially if it happens when you're quite young or quite adverse type of traumas, is that some of these structures start to shrink. So that's what we see sort of later on in life. So maybe that's the easiest way to explain it, like neurologically what happens. But obviously, if these certain structures starts to shrink, it also affects how they function and do other things. So the other neurons that are around those areas that used to function in a certain way, they also start functioning in different ways. They change the chemicals in the brain, and that's why then you end up having post-traumatic stress disorder, and it usually comes with other illnesses like depression, other anxiety disorders. You know, it can get so severe that sometimes you can even get a psychotic break, where now your brain starts misinterpreting you know, cues from the environment, cues from your own body, and usually happens in a lot of trauma where there's a loss of limb, where the brain still thinks that you have the limb. So let's make what Mr. DJ KABILA was talking about, that now the brain still thinks that you can feel your legs, and suddenly you have pain from those legs, but you know but you can't actually get any you know, transmission from the brain to those neurons to your legs, but you have what we call phantom leg, for instance, where you get this extreme pain from your legs, but there's actually no neurons functioning that are going there. So those are some of the things that start happening sort of to the brain.
And some of, like, how do they affect us, doctor, with regards to, you know, like, for example, with my accident, even though I could still walk, you know, like I was not paralyzed, you know, but I had severe pain with regards to working, and I couldn't sit for long periods. I had to get a special chair for me to be sitting. But you know, to a certain extent, I used that as an excuse for me not to do work, instead of finding alternative ways, you know, for me to work. Is it also as an effect of the trauma of the accident?
Yes, it is. It can be part of the trauma. So sometimes what happens with part of the trauma, sometimes the brain tries to protect itself. It almost builds these walls around it, right, to protect itself. Like look at how we did with crime in South Africa. There's a lot of crime. People started wanting to live in the suburbs, building these high walls. But these high walls, once you have an intruder, those walls were there to protect you, but now they also become a barrier for you to sort of escape. So sometimes psychologically, the brain also does that. So what we call in psychology sort of learned helplessness, right? So that initially your defenses come up to protect you, but with time, these defenses are so high that they paralyze you, almost debilitate you, and also make you not want to do anything. That it almost like this trauma zaps away like your motivation and your will to live and your will to want to do things. That you almost feel like it feels worthless to do things. Then you just stay in that situation. And sometimes we don't even aware sometimes that we're doing it. Sometimes we do it subconsciously, because sometimes when we are unable to do certain things, then we get more attention from our loved ones. We get more affection, the more supportive. So sometimes the brain sort of not consciously does that, but subconsciously sometimes it keeps you sort of in that, so that people can be around you. People can you feel more needed, or other people feel the need to help you even more. So sometimes the brain does that a little bit as well.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that, KABILA, with regards to how you actually receive help. Did you get to a point where, because we've seen in movies where somebody is maybe has an accident and they're paralyzed, and now they also don't want to be helped, they don't want pity from other people. How have you handled that with regards to people who want to help you versus people who just feel pity for you and feel like you can't do other things, and when you can do other things on your own, but how have you dealt with especially family and friends receiving help from them?
Okay, I stayed like in the hospital like for about 3 months, and the following year, my mother, because we were staying in PE, he had to move to Pretoria. So even the school that I was at, Russell Road College, was not accessible. So I had to get a new school, which is like PE Tech, because I was studying electrical engineering. So that's where I really, told myself, which like there are things that I like. Like I like partying, I like, doing my own things, So I developed that strength, in terms of, going and doing my own groceries, because at some point, you will have friends, who are going to help you so much, but because they are not in your situation, they won't understand your situation. So for me, it was important, to really build the physical strength, because now I was like depending on my arms, to do everything, whether I'm going to a taxi, or where I'm going to buy my own groceries, I'll go a kilometer, go to spa, get my groceries, come back, because I was now like staying on my own. There was no one like who was really helping me, but like, because I grew up in like loving people. Yeah, but so for me, my character didn't change. So I had a lot of friends, who liked, like my personality,
Sure.
So I was not that guy like Kuti, like now I'm on a wheelchair and I need to abantu bangidabukele, like they must feel pity for me,
Yeah.
I told myself from getting out of the hospital, which I know what, I'm gonna be this guy, like who's gonna be stylish. I'm not gonna lose myself because of disability.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So I think mentally, I've maintained that thing, which if you feel pity, man, that thing is gonna destroy you. You'll never get anywhere. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I think from rehab, I trained my mind, watching. Well, like, my family, like my brother is here now.
Yeah.
I've been staying with him, I've been staying here in Devon from 2004. He just came in, I think, last year, like when, that's when, like, even now we still fight, because he knows, like, I'm driving, I'm doing this, I'm a DJ, but sometimes I need that little bit of, for instance, if I'm gonna go to like I need to go to the bank, I need to draw some money, I need to take out my wheelchair, you know,
Mm.
go there, get out, get in the car, and go maybe do some groceries. So sometimes it takes me longer,
Mm.
you know. So it's those times when I really need help. Which, okay, my man, today I need to go maybe like get some sweaters. I need to go to the printing. You know, those things. I cannot I cannot do it on my own. So that's
Sure.
when I would like ask some help. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
You know?
Now I hear
Or if
you.
I'm going to like travel a long distance, you know that's where it's.
Y-
I'm not always like that guy which you know, because I've learned early in my life which I need to be self-sufficient, you
Yeah.
know, to at least 80% of my stuff or 70%, I need to do it because also you need privacy, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Sure.
You can't
Sure.
always be having someone
Mm.
next to you.
I
I
hear
was
you.
fortunate enough that I was not a quadriplegic, you know, I still have like
Yeah.
you know, some arms, you know,
Mm.
to do some certain things, you know, and yeah.
Mm. No, my man, like for me, yeah, like I say, your story every time, like when we meet and when I see the things that you do, they really, really do like uplift me, you know, like, and doctor, I want to ask you, there are like you could put two people in the exact same situation, like you could put somebody you know, who goes through a traumatic experience and then the next person right next to each other, and these people will respond differently to the trauma, you know, like what Kabila said, he decided and he chose that he's gonna be proactive and he's gonna be self-sufficient. As much as it's not an easy thing, but it's a decision that he took. But there's also a decision that's also seemingly, it seems like it's an easier decision to take, which is to fall back and feel sorry for yourself and you know, be depressed. And not that everybody, not that people want to be depressed, but it's almost like a decision, a default decision that we go to when we are faced by these difficult situations. um, what is it that differentiates between those two people?
Okay, so one of the things, first of all, is to acknowledge, do you have any vulnerabilities? So people that already have an existing vulnerability to mental illness, you know, they won't experience trauma sort of the same. And also, we are born with what we call a temperament. So our temperament is something inherent, like something that we're genetically born with in terms of our personality. You know, whether we're going to be introverts or extroverts, you're already born with it. It's just that the environment that you grow up sort of shapes that out of you. And we have what we call resilience, right? So we all have some resilience, and the resilience is sort of our capacity to sort of bounce back after like a traumatic experience. And usually resilience, you know, stems from, like I talked about, the temperament. Sometimes it's also what we modeled in society. You modeled your parents, seeing how they experience trauma and bounce back from certain difficulties, or something that you have read or learned, you know. So some of those things should sort of shape how you sort of bounce back. And you know, there's certain vulnerabilities, like using substances, for instance, to sort of cope, that sort of can also like lead you astray and make you more depressed, more anxious, for instance, you know. But one of the other things is, and I think DJ Kabila talked about it. First is, you know, when this happens, as much as possible to remain calm. And you know, I could hear from his story, you know, there's a certain point where he didn't listen to his body so well, you know, where he said, you know, how I learned to sleep on one side, and then, you know, I ended up with bed sores. You know, sometimes there's a little bit of resistance from ourselves to say, but I know I can do this. Why can't I just do everything normal like I used to be to before? But then, you know, sometimes it takes one sort of adverse thing that says, well, I suppose you need to change, because if you don't change, it means you'll end up in hospital another year. But sometimes it is not for a year or so, but then you know, that could be that one thing that propels you to say, you know what, I need to change. I need to accept what has happened. Me accepting it, it doesn't mean that I'm saying I'm okay with it. I'm just saying that I'm accepting what I don't have control over. And then you sit down, you say, what do I have control over from here onwards? And I think, you know, he spoke from a place of strength and said, okay, these are the certain things I can change in my life. What do I have working for me? My personality, I'm an outgoing person. I still want to do music. So you don't stop, then you just alter. How can I do this a little bit better with the challenges that I have? You know, it's not that you let it go completely and you start a new life. It's like, what do I have going already that I can sort of make it better? And then, and he said, you know, I can't do everything 100%. Then there's certain things that I want my independence, my privacy, but I know when I need to go to the bank, for instance, I will do this. But then there'll be those little things in life as you go on that sort of remind you that you have this challenge like other people. And I can imagine, you know, waking up after the accident, for instance, and you suddenly can't move your legs and you suddenly want to brush your teeth and you realize how far the toothbrush holder is, you know, how something like that is so trivial to everybody, you know, or maybe trying to unlock the door and you suddenly realize how high it is. You know, those little subtle things that you now have to change sort of your life, how you stay. You can't stay in a double-story house. You need to stay in a flat house. So a lot of your life, you sort of have to adapt it now to your strengths, not to your weaknesses, to your strength. You play against your strengths and say, what do I have going for me and what can I make it better? And the things maybe that I will need help with, who do I have? Who do I have access? You know, he's happy to hear his family support. He has his brother, but then there's a lot of independence. He's the one directing what help he needs. You know, it's not sitting and waiting for people to come and say what can we do. You know, he's taking ownership of his life, and that's what sort of some of the differences are. And some people unfortunately look this comes naturally to them. Some people do need help, so they will need like a therapist or a psychologist, a psychiatrist, the neurologist. And usually at the rehab centers, we work as a team. So you'll have a physician, a neurologist, a psychiatrist, social worker, psychologist, physio, OT, and we all work as a team. You know, and we sit in meetings and say, okay, what areas are our patients doing well in? What can we help with? What can we improve? How can we rope in family? How can we rope in their strengths? So that's why working as a team in a rehab center works so well, because then it's easier for that person to access those strong parts of themselves and make it work for them going to the future. Yeah.
And something that you mentioned, doctor, as well, that I find so, like, I just want to stress it. It's the feeling that we as people kind of only want to go to the doctor when you've got a headache, you know, but like when you've got depression, you know, you are suddenly afraid that people will look at you in another way when you go see a therapist, you know, like when you go see a psychiatrist especially. I just want to, like, with regards to trauma and somebody, what are some of the initial things that you do if somebody comes with from a traumatic experience, maybe a car accident, maybe the loss of somebody, and they can't really deal with it, they can't grasp it? What are some of the initial steps that you guys do as psychiatrists? For example, if somebody is coming to your practice and they are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder of some sort, those initial steps lirang with the patients?
So it depends. So everything is sort of time-based in terms of what sort of therapy do we sort of do. So immediately after the traumatic incident, we'll probably do a lot of supportive trauma counseling. So we don't delve a lot into the emotions. It's mainly to support you through this ordeal that has happened, because your brain is still trying to process things. You know, it's not really has digested it. So, and then shortly, maybe like hours to days after, what we now sort of call acute stress disorder, before post-traumatic stress disorder, there's therapy guided towards that. So where we do maybe a little bit of more supportive stuff, and now we do more like interventional stuff where we can sort of access some of your psychological defenses, your resilience, and all of that. And then post-traumatic stress, meaning now the trauma has happened almost 6 weeks ago, right? So there are certain ways that you have already tried to adjust naturally, to what has happened. And somehow how you have adjusted, some of those ways were healthy and some of those ways were not so healthy, and probably made the post-traumatic stress disorder and the anxiety symptoms much worse. So now it's like trying to almost unweave sort of what is working well, what's not working well. And then we do sort of different therapies where we do like a lot of trauma focused therapies, sometimes to make you relive some of the incidents, but in a less threatening way, where you don't almost feel like when you come out of therapy, you come out of victim, but you come out with a lot of strength that you could conquer this. And sometimes to acknowledge that you didn't have control of what had happened, because some people almost have this guilt. And we see it a lot of times with men, if they have a traumatic incident where maybe it was a hijacking or some form of assault, where but I mean, I know I could have given that guy like a clap or like a fist, or I could have ran, or I could have hit him back, or I did martial arts, but why couldn't I do that in that moment? And sometimes because this fear response either makes you fight or makes you run away, or sometimes the trauma is so overwhelming that the brain says, I know you have all these defenses, but in this moment, my priority is to protect you and keep you alive no matter what. So if it means I'm going to make you freeze, not talk, not do anything, and almost you feel like you're paralyzed and I can't do anything, I'd rather do that to you and save your life than try and make you fight and then lose your life. So sometimes when you look back, you're like, but I could have ran, I could have hit this guy, I could have done that, So those thoughts then come, that sort of the thoughts then almost like consume you so much that you end up not doing anything. So now some of the therapy now is guided towards those sort of thoughts in the background that has happened sort of after the trauma. And then, so past traumas that have happened a long time ago, complex trauma, things like hypnotherapy sometimes might work. It's still a bit controversial. So there are different type of therapies, and like I said, it depends on the time from the trauma has happened. That what sort of help do we give you, because your brain needs different help at different stages of the healing process.
No, it definitely makes sense. I mean, like, I need to mention that when I got into that accident, I was actually going to DJ KABILA's gig, and funny enough, after the accident happened, because the paramedics came, they checked me. I didn't have much pain, like I had a bit of a uneasy on my chest, but like my back was fine. I was okay. I guess my body was still kind of in shock. But I felt like, you know what, I can actually still do this gig. And we went to the gig, So I played the gig. The following day, I flew back to Johannesburg. And only then, after like a day and a half, did I start feeling the pain, But KABILA, I want to ask you, bro, like, do you still find that the effects of your accident still come back to you mentally, even now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a process, like they still do, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, because it's not, I was never born like this.
Sure.
You understand what I'm saying? There are frustrating moments whereby I'll be like, what, I could have done this on my own, but there are things like which are like really, limiting me, and sometimes you find like your body like it doesn't want to carry you, but you still want to move on. So it does get into me, and sometimes there are moments whereby, like, even in your career, you get what you sometimes ask yourself, what am I being, is it because of my disability, or I could have got this, you know what I'm saying? Even like going to work, and you find what, like, this DJ booth can't even accommodate you.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Those things like they do frustrate you. You understand? Because you can see which you're not even comfortable. You know to work
Mm.
and do whatever that you have chosen to do even after your disability. You know,
Mm.
so it does get but you know I always find a way because you know I'm a person you know who's got faith you know and who prays a lot about what I want to do. So most of the time I don't take disability as a stumbling block. I always find a way to move around it.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
yeah.
But I think I still say it's such a powerful thing because not many people actually can, you know, make up in their minds how difficult it is, you know, to be in that position. And I think there was like there's been different studies, especially like you'd see CEOs of like big companies taking a pledge that for this week we are going to be homeless. We're gonna be sleeping in the street. We're gonna be finding ways to eat from the street, and that on its own, it just changes their outlook on how they see people with like homeless people. Similarly with people with disabilities, I can't remember who did it. I think Skumba does something with Skumba the comedian with regards to wheelchairs, where if you spend a day on a wheelchair as a normal person, just to experience and have empathy towards people who are disabled, you know. And I think the point that you mentioned with regards to our clubs, our nightclubs, you as a DJ, and somebody that I can think of is DJ Phobia as well, who's he's visually impaired, and he still DJs. You know, he's good at what he does. You are good at what you do, but our venues don't seem to cater for people with disabilities. Even if you are not a DJ, just somebody who's going out to go and party, and you are wheelchair bound. It's not an easy thing. Now you need to be thinking: do they have a ramp? Do they have this? Do they have a space for you? You know, and I think our venues need to do a bit more on that. But I want to ask you this, Kabila, like with regards to because I know, are you involved in any projects that concern specifically artists with disabilities?
Basically, it's not even artists, it's like people with disabilities. It's called Beyond Disabilities, a non-profit organization, you know, just to show like, you know, that trying to make a way for people with disability because I'm an artist, you know, I'm given a voice, you know. So some people like me don't have a voice, but they still want to enjoy life, you know, to the fullest. You know, they want to go party, they want to, you know, go to the parks, they want to enjoy beaches, you know what I'm saying, you know, but nothing is really being done, you know what I'm saying. So like I was looking at myself like as in the way my kind of work, you know, me as a DJ, I'm not even like accommodated into the DJ booth, you know, the toilet facilities, they are not okay, you know. So it becomes, I told myself, you know what, I need to do like an awareness campaign, you know, just to highlight these issues, you know. So we're still in a process, you know, we've registered, we've done some campaigns, you know. I used to do a party called the Party with a Purpose, which was like, I dedicated my birthday, you know, to raise some funds, you know. We raised some funds for a school in Namlazi, Mason Lincoln, you know, because I could see with like even in the school, you know, their fields where they play basketball, they are not okay, even their beds and everything, you know, their environment within the school was not okay. Because like I went there, because I used to work for SAPS before, like recruitment, you know. So we were there like doing like life skills where they can go, you know, like those kids, that they can even, there are platforms within SAPS that they can, and because I was already a DJ and I was like, you know what, I need to do something, so um, I developed that concept because I just started as a party, with like maybe I can raise some funds. But I realized when I was like doing these parties, it was, I couldn't even get people like me into those clubs where I was raising funds, you know. Um, and even to get the DJs, yeah, I understand. Maybe if I'm going to like get you're coming from Joburg, I need to accommodate you. I need to, fly you, and even if like maybe I'm not going to pay you your fee, but now like whatever that I will be raising there, you know,
You still have to
it
pay.
all goes into like the whole production, So it was becoming like pointless. I had to review my concept, and then I developed a non-profit organization called Beyond Disability, which is doing this awareness, and we're still working on it in terms of how we're going to like, maybe sometimes we talk to like venue owners to do like ramps, to have like, the toilet facilities which are going to accommodate people with disabilities, things like those,
Sure.
just for accessibility.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah,
For
like,
sure, man.
yeah.
No, and just before we end, we will talk a bit about your event. Music will save the day. But doctor, I wanna bring you in with regards to therapy and medical, mental health from a medical side of things. We've been thinking like, or like people always usually think that therapy is expensive, therapy is not accessible to them. And I remember you telling me something about medical aids and a fund within the medical aid specifically focused towards mental health. Could you please explain in that regard?
All right. So if I'll say maybe for the big medical aids, like your common ones, your Discovery, your Bonitas, your MedScheme, GEMS, all those related ones, they have a mental health benefit. So you'll see most medical aids, when they have their brochures, they'll have like a cancer benefit, hypertension benefit, cancer, diabetes, all of those benefits. They also have a benefit for mental illness and mental wellness. So some medical aids don't cover all the mental illnesses. So they will cover definitely bipolar and schizophrenia for chronic and prescribed minimum benefits. So most medical aids, I think people are not aware that it's not that when you go to a therapist, they will take it out of your savings. So there's already a mental wellness benefit to it. And there's some medical aids that have gone above and beyond just you seeing your psychiatrist, for instance, where they will give you courtesy calls after you've seen your psychiatrist, for instance, to check up, how the medication is going, how's therapy going? Do you need any other added help? And also, I suppose they're doing it also to make sure that you stay well, because if you don't stay well, then you cost them more money. So it's probably like almost a business opportunity for them as well, to make sure people sort of stay well, and you stay on course and you stay adherent to your medication. And look, and I suppose psychiatry is one of the unique specialities that we always think about a human being in a holistic way, that we just don't think about the biology, which is, where the medication is, but we also think about the environment that you exist in. You exist in a family, you exist in a community, and how all of those things sort of influence how you experience your mental health challenges. So spirituality, culture, religion, how do they all come together? And so that's why therapy in psychiatry is so unique, that we delve into all of those things to say, how does it get better? And I can imagine, perhaps in the African culture, for instance, if you had to have a disability where, you have certain proverbs that a man doesn't cry, when you experience such a traumatic incident and you are told, just man up, get over it. How sometimes it can be so hard to access therapy because you're told men don't cry, you don't do this, that sometimes when you're struggling with certain things, then you don't go out and reach out for therapy. And Gauteng and Western Province, we've done actually a lot in terms of trying to make mental health accessible, even in the state facilities. So in the clinics, I'll speak for Johannesburg, for instance, and Sidibeng, so Val, your Sebokeng, your Sharpeville. We have mental health clinics where we offer therapy. We have social workers, we have psychologists, we have doctors that are training to be specialists that are rotating in those clinics, and they have a psychiatrist that is attached to the hospital and the clinics to sort of monitor and support. So there's a lot. There's a lot of help. And there are also free services like your South African Depression and Anxiety Group. So people but just Google and find out as much as possible. So that sometimes if you don't have medical aid, it doesn't mean that that's the end and be all of it. There are other ways of also accessing therapy.
Yeah. And just in closing, doctor, with regards to mental strength and just training ourselves, let's say you're not sick and you haven't been through a traumatic experience per se, but you sort of like are not pushing yourself. Some events, traumatic events, can have a way of pushing and propelling us forward in terms of going for our dreams. How can we train ourselves on a daily? What are some of the things that people can do to train themselves mentally?
I suppose, like we're doing for any illness, physical and mental illness, is, stay healthy. You want to eat a balanced life, a balanced lifestyle, so healthy diet as much as possible, and especially your Mediterranean type of diet or your plant-based type of diets. And your fish sort of based diets which have like a lot of omega-3s, moderate exercise, and moderate use of substances. So we're not saying no alcohol, no cannabis, no other, but everything sort of in moderation. And look, when you're going through difficult times, as much as if right now you had a cough, you'll go to your GP. Going to therapy must be as fashionable as going to gym.
Yeah.
So because when you're going to gym, you're preventing getting adverse medical problems and you're keeping healthy. So the same should be like for mental illness or mental wellness, to say that. And when in doubt, talk to someone. Just talk to someone, whether it's a professional, a friend, or a stranger. Strangers are the best. So just talk to someone and reach out.
Sure. And KABILA, my man, like you have, you've just dropped remixes for your smashing hit Somnyama featuring Manu. Is part of the remix package. Can you tell us a bit about that and just about your musical Save the Day? You can't do it this year, obviously, because of the lockdown and COVID-19, but future plans with regards to that event.
Oh yeah, man. Somnyama is a very great song, which I did like last year, March. So I met a friend in Greece when I visited there, Jamaica. I asked him, to do a remix. I've also licensed it on Ocha Records, whereby Manu asked Casamena, because he liked the song very much, that he wanted to remix it, and also asked a dear friend of mine, Lemon and Hep, to also do a remix. So it's doing very well. We're sitting at number on the top 10 on Traxsource, and on the Afro House we're at number 1.
Nice.
And then coming to music will Save the Day, the corona it disturbed us.
Yeah.
It's a very it's a concept whereby like I do events. I've got an analog stage whereby I've got guys playing your records. I always bring my friend Bubbles, like Winnie, I've got the it's an analog and a digital stage, So, and then it's also about teaching the young, and upcoming, how to move around within the industry. I do a music workshop, So it's a very um, helpful way of how can I put it? I can say it's very informative platform, and also give a platform to the small guys because I always mix, the guys who've already established and done so well in the music industry, like yourself, like Abutulo, and then bring like smaller guys, like in KZN, like Abu Pub Souls, like Abu Pilo, small guys, So it gives them also like that platform, to be inspired and learn from bigger guys.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Cool.
I've got also like an element within the merchandising element, which is I do like sweaters, caps and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and today is a bit cold, my man. I was planning to wear your sweater, and I was like, "Hey, today I need a bigger jacket, my man." But anyway, yeah, people can check that out. It's Music Will Save the Day, and you can catch him at DJ KABILA on his social platforms. But just to close with regards to the services that Dr. Tonyane offers at her practice, depression, anxiety. She treats bipolar illness, trauma, and stress-related illnesses, obsessive compulsive related disorders, personality disorders, ADHD, and kind of like generally a lot of different mental illnesses. So like I said, guys, she's based at the Life Kastenhof Hospital. Let me just get that on the screen. Yeah, cool. Yeah. So she's based at the Life Kastenhof Hospital, and the number there is 011-655-5641. You can check that out if you need any assistance in that regard. Anyway, yeah, Doctor, I wanted to say to you, thank you so much for spending your time and sharing your knowledge with us on the show. I really, really do appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
KABILA, my man, thank you. Thank you, my brother. Thank you. Like, I really wish you all the best with regards to your work as well. Your mental strength, right? It's it speaks volumes. Like, the work that you do just tells me that as an able person, if I really do as well put my mind to it and put my focus onto things, I am able to do much more than I think I am. Sometimes we feel like limited by what we feel we don't have, but the true power really relies within us. So I want to say thank you, my man, for doing this morning.
No, thank you very much, Sir LSG. This means a lot to me, my man. People like you who's always like supporting whatever that I want to do. I wouldn't be doing, so much if I didn't have like people like you, like supporting my move, my dreams, my everything that I want to do. So like to have people like you as friends, as colleagues who support my vision, it means a lot to me.
Sure, my brother. No, anytime. And then, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please comment and tag somebody who might learn, who might enjoy the conversation, and please, most importantly, share the video so more people can see it. And thank you. Tomorrow on the show, I've got Martin Edges, from a British producer. We all know Edges, they are super remixer, super producer. So joining us on the show tomorrow morning from 9 a.m. Please remember to join in, and let's all be creative. Peace out.